So it has definitely been a while since the last time I made a downfall of a TV show video. I actually didn't think that I would make another downfall video after Family Guy, but then I remembered the show that I used to love. A show that I consider as one of the best Nickelodeon cartoons after SpongeBob SquarePants. A show that I found amazing until a certain point where it got worse. I'm of course talking about The Fairly OddParents. The Fairly OddParents is an animated series created by Butch Hartman for Nickelodeon. The show is about a 10-year-old boy, Timmy Turner, who lives a miserable life that consists of neglectful parents, school bullies, and a babysitter that tries to kill him. One day he gets two fairy godparents, Cosmo and Wanda, who grant him wishes to solve his everyday problems. In the early 90s, Butch was hired by Hanna-Barbera to work as an artist in model department. He eventually became a writer, director, and storyboard artist for several of the early Cartoon Network shows, such as Dexter's Laboratory and Johnny Bravo. After his contract with Hanna-Barbera expired, Butch went to work with Fred Seibert at his new studio called Frederator. There he worked on the Oh Yeah Cartoons show for Nickelodeon. In 1997, Butch created The Fairly OddParents for Oh Yeah Cartoons. The first episode, which was a 7-minute short, came out in 1998. After Oh Yeah Cartoons ended in 2001, Nickelodeon decided to make a full series from these short episodes. After that, The Fairly OddParents premiered in 2001 and became a huge hit. It was the second in the ratings after SpongeBob and even managed to briefly pass SpongeBob. The success of Fairly OddParents helped Butch to create animated shows in the future, like Danny Phantom, which was well received by critics and audience and also very successful. Sadly though, with all of the rise, there's also a decline. A decline in quality that was severe to watch. When we did the Family Guy video, you could see how quickly the decline of the show happened, with creators using more dark humor and making the character personalities worse. So how will it be with the Fairly OddParents? Is it going to be as bad as Family Guy's downfall or a little better? Well, we're gonna find that out today. Like with Family Guy, me and my friend Jeffy 2010 are going to shortly talk about every single season of the Fairly OddParents and see how the quality changed throughout the seasons. So without further ado, let's talk about every season of the Fairly OddParents. That's weird. Season 0? I mean, I thought that we would start with a regular season 1 like with other shows, but then I remembered that all of the short episodes that were made before the release of season 1 are called season 0. Okay, so season 0 was a really weird one. You can obviously tell that this is the Fairly OddParents, but there's also a lot of factors that make season 0 very different from the original show. First of all, the animation in this one looks nostalgic, but it also makes the season differ from the rest of the show. Like, honestly, Timmy looks very different from his later design. Cosmo and Wanda also have a slight difference from their later designs. And also, Timmy's parents don't even show their faces in this season, what the hell? Anyway, this season contains 10 7-minute shorts. The biggest problems I have with the shorts is that they mostly contain the same formula. Timmy's parents go somewhere, Wiki stays to torture him, Timmy defeats her with the help of his magical fairies. There you go, that's the formula for most of them. Although I'm glad that they later added some other characters such as Jorgen Von Strangle. My favorite short would probably be the very first one. The reason is that it mostly feels the most nostalgic for me. The formula is simple, but it's basically a great introduction for the show. I wouldn't really call any short from the season bad. Sure, there were repetitive ones, but they still had their own creativity. Overall, season 0 is a really weird but also sweet start of the show. I wonder how it's gonna go with the next season. Well, here it is, the first season of the show. Now you can immediately see a step up from the previous season. This season started great with an episode called The Big Problem. I love the whole idea of Timmy becoming an adult but then realizing that life as a kid isn't that bad. Just from the first episode you could tell how much fun improvement this season was. The episode plot stopped being repetitive and became more creative. There are a lot of creative episodes in this season that I like. Power Mad, which was the second episode of the season, has a nice plot of Timmy wishing for an extremely challenging video game. When his two best friends, Chester and AJ, come over, they end up transporting into the game. This leads to Timmy needing to save them before the game shuts down forever. Not only is the concept unique and creative, but this episode also has some funny jokes. Hell, even the third episode of the season called Space Scout is great in my opinion. Timmy wishes for an authentic alien, which makes Cosmo and Wanda bring Mark Chang from planet Yugopatamia. Mark then captures Timmy's best friends and falls in love with Wiki. Because magic can't affect love, Timmy, Cosmo and Wanda have to find a way of sending Mark home. The plot of this episode is also unique, and I obviously liked this one for introducing Mark Chang. If you take it as a whole, Season 1 introduced a lot of great characters. Seriously, there were only a few main characters in Season 0. What I really liked about this season is that you can immediately see how the art style changed from Season 0. the characters started looking more like their modern versions, and the animation as a whole improved from the previous one. I'm obviously not gonna talk about each episode in the season, but I just wanted to mention that despite having only 12 episodes and a 30-minute special, the season managed to be amazing. None of the episodes were bad, and the weakest ones were just alright. I don't have anything else to say except the fact that the season was great and had some of my favorite episodes. Okay, now this is a huge freaking step up from the first two seasons. Season 2 is definitely one of my most favorite seasons in the Fairly OddParents. There's only one season that I think is better than this one, but we'll get to that later. The reason for this season being amazing is obviously because of the characters. Season 1 had some new characters that I liked, but Season 2 freaking added a lot of great characters. They added Chip Skylark, Anti-Cosmo, Anti-Wanda, Remy Buxaplenty, Dinkelberg, and the list just goes on. You know, this is actually one of the factors that I liked about the show itself. They could have had a lot of characters in the early seasons, but all of them would have their own personalities and work well in various episodes. The animation in this season also managed to improve from the previous one, which is also great to see. When it comes to the episodes, this season managed to have a bigger amount of amazing episodes than season 1. That's kinda because of many episodes introducing characters I love, but it's also because of the episode concepts. The first episode of the season that introduced Chip Skylark was amazing in my opinion. It has a nice concept of Timmy hating Chip for taking everybody's attention on his birthday, but then realizing that Chip's birthday is on the same day as Timmy's birthday. The reason he can't celebrate it though is just because of not having enough time. Some of my favorite episodes of the entire show come from this season. There's also Totally Spaced Out, which is a nice sequel to Spaced Out from season 1. The story is about Mark Chen coming back on Earth to take Wiki with him. He at first feels happy about it, but needs to get Wiki back after his parents find a new babysitter. There also were some very funny episodes, such as Fool's Day Out, with Timmy summoning an ultimate prankster for a April Fool's that doesn't know when to stop. Talking about each episode of the season will take more time, but as I already said, this season managed to have even better episodes than season 1. The worst episodes were just alright, so this is definitely a great sign of things.
Season 3 is awesome. I mean, it has the first TV movie, Catastrophe, which is really decent. I like it. And this is my favorite season in the entire show. Of the entire franchise. I like so many episodes. Like Osmocon, Most Wanted Wish. This is your wish. And so many more episodes I can name, like Odd Jobs. This is a really good season. Cosmocon is, in my opinion, the best episode of the entire show. So yeah, season 3 is a good season.
Well, here it is, my most favorite season of the entire show. Now, some may disagree and put seasons 3, 2 or 1 as the best season, but season 4 will always stay as the best Fairly OddParents season for me. If we start with some minor pluses, I would like to mention the animation. I think that the animation of the show so far improves with each season, and this one is an example of that. Sure, the animation isn't amazing compared to the last seasons, but I think that each season has the quality of animation slightly improved from the previous one. So even if we exclude all the specials this season had, then even that wouldn't change anything. There are so many amazing episodes from this season, with some being my most favorite from the whole show. My most favorite episode isn't from this season, but if you take all of the episodes from this season as a whole, then it's obvious that this one season had the biggest amount of creative episodes, at least in my opinion. Firstly, this season introduced some cool characters like Dark Laser, Norm the Genie, Catman, and of course the Pixies. Seriously, I love the Pixies as antagonists. They appear in 3 episodes of this season, and I seriously love each episode they are in. The first one is about them buying Fairy World and controlling it with boring restrictions, which is a great introduction for their characters in my opinion. The second has an interesting concept of Timmy's fairies being replaced by the Pixies if he doesn't stop making bad wishes. The second one is overall very creative, with being the only musical special of the show. Speaking of specials, there were a lot of those in this season, from just good specials to freaking fantastic ones. There's the musical one, the one when Jimmy Neutron teams up with Timmy Turner, and of course the Channel Chasers. There were some simple specials that worked well, like Shelf Life or Big Superhero Wish, but I have to admit that Channel Chasers was the best one. It's not just my opinion, many people agree with the fact that this special could have been a great way to end the series. Channel Chasers just did everything you could want from the Fairly OddParents finale. Different animation styles, a lot of funny jokes, great episode concept, and a nice ending. I personally consider this as one of my most favorite episodes overall, and definitely my most favorite special. This season seems to be the most perfect one for me. The majority of the episodes were great, with only a few being weak but not to the point of outright bad. And you know what, if a show managed to make 5 seasons without a single terrible one, then it's definitely a great result. I hope that season 6 is going to keep it this way. Now season 5 was a really weird one. Compared to the previous ones, this season had some really weak and bad episodes. Does it make this season bad though? Well, from my perspective, this season was actually pretty good. It's obviously weaker than the previous seasons, but I wouldn't call it bad. Also, the reason I like this season is because it was my favorite episode from the whole show, which I'm gonna reveal soon. If we start with the positive features, I think that the season has great animation, and as I already said before, so far the animation manages to slightly improve with each season. There's not a lot to say when it comes to animation since it's mostly similar to the previous seasons, but believe me though, the animation is gonna get worse with future seasons. Maybe it's just my opinion, but I just like the style of the early seasons more. This season did feature a few new characters such as Big Daddy, Shallow Grave, and Wanda's sister Blonda. Despite not being bad characters, they only really appear a few times in the season and then just disappear for the rest of the show. Okay, Shallow Grave did appear once in season 9, but that doesn't really change anything. The problem with many of the side characters in the show is that they can stay for some certain seasons, but then just disappear for no reason. Okay, maybe there is a reason for the writers stopping to use them, but you get what I mean. Anyway, as I already said, some new characters from this season aren't bad, but they also aren't worth mentioning much because of appearing only a few times in the season. Okay, so when it comes to the actual episodes, then this season did have some weak episodes, like Tease for Two or It's a Wishful Life. Tease for Two sucks for having a weird concept of Tooth Fairy dumping Jorgen for trying to rip out Timmy's teeth as a proposal for her, which then makes Jorgen depressed for getting dumped by Tooth Fairy. It's a Wishful Life, which is probably the worst episode yet, has a concept of Timmy never being born but everyone living happily without him. I'm just sorry, but I'm personally not a fan of this concept. I just find it way too mean-spirited for Timmy. Also, I would like to say how they brought back Remy Box Aplenty in this season with 3 episodes, but 2 of them were just alright, with only 1 episode being good. The episode I liked was about Remy and Timmy competing for rule-free wishes from Cupid, only to eventually realize that Cupid was just using both of them. This is also kinda sad, since after this Remy would appear only once in season 9. I have the same thing to say about Mark Chang. He had 2 episodes dedicated to him in this season, but I only liked What's the Difference, with the second one about 5 Days of Flark just being kinda mediocre. Anyway, there definitely were some bad episodes, but the majority of this season was actually good in my opinion. There were a lot of specials in this season, and I really think that the only one I wasn't a fan of was Crash Nebula. Like, we had Jimmy Timmy Power Hour 2 and 3, which I think were both great. My favorite would still be the first one, but Jimmy Timmy Power Hour 2 and 3 aren't even close to being bad. The second is about Jimmy and Timmy competing against each other to get Cindy Vortex on Friday the 13th dance. I think that the concept is nice, and it was a cool idea to add a villain from both of the shows in this one special. The third one is about Jimmy and Timmy working together to create a villain that eventually manages to be stronger than them. Because of not spending time with their other friends, they decide to apologize and team up to defeat the villain. While it's not as strong as the first 2, it was still a good way to end the Jimmy Timmy Power Hour trilogy. Speaking about trilogies, Norm the Genie came back in this season with 2 episodes. The second one is decent. Norm tries to work with Mr. Croker for revenge on Timmy Turner, but then betrays him. The last episode of this trilogy though, it is freaking amazing. It would take time to talk about the whole episode, but I just want to say that it has a great concept of Norm becoming a fairy godparent to take revenge on Timmy and his fairies, only in the end to lose that job and become a genie again. There are a lot of great features such as creativity, songs, jokes, etc. Anyway, let's talk about my most favorite Fairly OddParents episode, which is The Good Old Days. Yeah, this is a weird choice, but I have one simple explanation of why this is my most favorite episode, and it's because of this being the first episode that made me interested in the whole concept of the Fairly OddParents. I sure watched a few good episodes before this one, but the amount of creativity in the good old days made this episode the best for me. The plot is about Timmy's grandfather Pappy babysitting him instead of Wiki. At first Timmy is happy about Wiki not torturing him, but he still gets frustrated after learning that Pappy hates everything modern and doesn't want to partake in fun activities with Timmy. Only after he catches Timmy watching Captain Green and the Echo Teens, Pappy shares a common interest with Timmy, which is cartoons. Then Timmy wishes for Dimsdale to turn into a black and white silent film cartoon from Pappy's era, so that he could have fun with his grandfather. Overall, I find the concept being amazing, and what I like the most about this episode is obviously the fascinating switch up in the art style. Channel Chasers would be a close second, but I personally consider this episode as my most favorite for being real creative with the idea, art style, and just because of being the episode that made me start watching the show more frequently. I just hope they would use Pappy more than once in the show, but that's not really a complaint. Season 5 was overall weaker with some bad and mediocre episodes, but still managed to stay as a good season for me because of the majority being great. And after this long season discussion, let's move on to Season 6.
So, after a long hiatus in 2007, the show returned with Very Odd Baby, which introduced Poof, a character that is alright, I guess. Just a meh character in my opinion. I mean, Poof does nothing other than be a baby. Kind of prefer if it does other stuff too, but it's alright, I guess. And the episodes are alright. Mostly good. Some are meh. A few are bad. But still, I like it. The best is OddParents. It's my second best episode of the entire show. And the worst of the season is open wide and say, Timmy torture. Oh god, I hate this episode so much. Worst of the season. So yeah, season 6 is good. Back to you, Martin.
Okay, Season 7 was really mediocre in my opinion. This is the point when the show just kinda lost all of its charm, but that's not really surprising. Firstly, this season introduced us to a new antagonist, Foop, whom I ironically like more than Poof. I don't know what it is, but Foop just seems like a better character because of having a role in the show. Poof doesn't really play a huge role throughout the show as one of the main characters. He's just mostly following the main characters and saying only Poof for the majority of the show. Sure, he had some episodes dedicated to him, some of which were actually good, but his character just overall isn't that interesting, and Poof would soon lead to other characters being added to the show. Their addition would obviously ruin the show even more, but we'll get to that later. Anyway, Foop isn't a great character, but still has a better role and motivation than Poof in my opinion. There were also a few minor characters added, like Mr. Ed Ledley or Miss Powers, but they would only appear a few times in future seasons, so they're not worth talking about much. The animation is probably one of the things that I enjoy about this season. I think the animation would change into a slightly worse direction with season 8 or 9, so I'm glad that the season's animation wasn't disappointing for me. So this season had only one special, which was the first episode of the season called Anti-Poop. I think that it's one of the best season 7 episodes overall for making a nice introduction to Poop's character and also for adding Anti-Cosma and Anti-Wanda. Too bad that this was the last season they appeared in. It's actually kinda sad when some of the classic secondary characters just disappear for the rest of the show, but what can you do about it? If you take this season as a whole, then it's just some great and terrible episodes with the majority being alright. Like in the previous seasons, I mostly used to love Mark Chang episodes. In this one, there were only 2 episodes with Mark Chang, only one of which being kinda good. The first is about Poof traveling to the moon because of Timmy and Wanda not playing with him. This results in him landing on the planet Duke of Atamia, after which Mark's mom uses him for getting whatever she wants. I think the concept of this episode is nice, with a good ending. There's also a second one with Timmy borrowing Mark's disguising device for Trixie's party, but turning into different monsters whenever he gets near her because of not knowing how to use the device. While the concept is fine and the episode isn't bad, it's still one of the weaker Mark Chang episodes. The worst episodes in the season are either Crocker Shocker or Lights Out. Crocker Shocker sucks for showing how writers just don't care about the show's continuity and just randomly make a concept about Mr. Crocker, forgetting about the fairies, which causes the fairy world to lose its power. Not only it doesn't make sense for the fairy world to get the power from Mr. Crocker's beliefs in fairies, but it's also just really mean-spirited for Mr. Crocker, who finally gets cured from his beliefs. Meanwhile, Lights Out is freaking mean-spirited for Timmy. So Timmy reads a scary story to Poof before bed, who doesn't let Timmy sleep for the whole night. Timmy then wishes for no lights during 12 hours, which causes him to survive from some random enemies during the darkness, including his fairies, who for some reason turn into hungry monsters after they are kept in the dark for longer than 8 hours. Firstly, this episode is way too mean-spirited to Timmy, almost killing a child for just a freaking story. Secondly, it kinda doesn't make sense for Cosmo and Wanda to transform into scary monsters by their own desire to punish him. And even if they did that by their own desire, they would at least tell it to him before turning into monsters in the episode. I thought if Crocker Shocker was worse, but at least that one could have been handled correctly. Lights Out was just mean-spirited from start to end. Also, I have a feeling that they tried to save money on this episode, since the majority of the backgrounds are just a black screen with characters' eyes. Lights Out is definitely one of my least favorite episodes in the whole show, so season 7 did make some terrible episodes. There were obviously some really good and creative ones. For example, we can take Operation Dinkelberg, where Timmy's dad spies on Dinkelberg due to thinking that he's a villain. In the end, it turns out that Dinkelberg was actually a villain the whole time, but he confesses to Timmy that he was just pretending to make his dad feel better. I think that the concept is creative and the episode itself is kinda good. We can also take Added Dad, which has a nice and creative concept of Timmy wanting to spend more time with his dad by creating many clones of him because of his dad always working on different jobs. The ending was Timmy sending all of the dads on a separate planet and giving them Timmy dolls was also kinda nice. Anyway, this season did have some good and terrible episodes, but the majority were just mediocre. The show isn't bad yet, but it's still worse than the previous seasons. What the hell? This season had only 5 episodes? And all of them were freaking specials? Then this season has to be amazing, right? Yeah, no. Season 8 has to be the most pointless season yet. Other seasons at least did something important, like introducing new interesting or maybe not so interesting characters, but this one is just so freaking pointless. Since there are only 5 specials in this one, let's briefly talk about each one of them. The first one is called Love Triangle. It's about Poof and Poop falling in love with some new girl, Goldie, that we won't see in the series again. After signing up for a play, Poop tries to injure Poop so that he could get the girl's love, but as you can guess, he fails and Goldie kisses Poop. Love Triangle is whatever, it's not terrible, but you can definitely make a better concept than this one. Timmy's Secret Wish was freaking terrible, definitely one of the worst episodes in the show for me. The episode is about Timmy preparing for his millionth wish, which is celebrated in the intro by a forgettable song. The Fairy World makes a parade for Timmy, only then for the Fairy Council to put him on a trial for being the worst godchild ever, because of all of the bad wishes he made. Cosmo works as Timmy's lawyer, while Poop is a prosecuting attorney. One day invites some witnesses to stand past wishes that were brought to life by Timmy. She invites characters like Dark Laser, Mark Chang, and Crimson Chin. Also, this is the last time Crimson Chin appears in an episode of the show, so that's sad. Anyway, Timmy always wins, but Poop somehow finds evidence about Timmy's secret wish. His secret wish from Cosmo was to make everyone on Earth stop aging, so that he could have his fairies forever. Also, he asked Cosmo to forget about the wish, so because of that nobody knew about the wish 50 freaking years. Timmy then loses his fairy godparents and ages as everyone throughout all 50 years. He later finds Mr. Crocker, who didn't age for some reason, and remembers how he had an obsession with fairies. Crocker also remembers thinking that Timmy had fairies. Timmy then goes to Crocker Cave with Mr. Crocker, where he changes the location of Crocker's portal and sends them to the fairy world. There he remembers about Cosmo and Wanda and meets them again, after which he is turned into a 10-year-old boy again. They don't remember about Poof by Jorgen's help, who became morbidly abused due to all the grief that undoing Poof brought him. Anyways, he helps them go to the place where Poof and all the others were sent, called Hocus Pocus. Timmy sacrifices himself but manages to rescue Poof, Foop, Dark Laser, and Crimson Chin. Later at the court, the Fairy Council agrees to rescue him from Hocus Pocus. Timmy finally reveals that he made the secret wish because of always wanting to stay with his fairies, since they are his family and that is more important than wishes. The fairy court cries with everyone else in the room and lets everything stay the way it was. The freaking end! Firstly, this special shows that Timmy didn't learn a single lesson from Channel Chasers about growing up. Secondly, if nobody knew about the secret wish, how did Foop suddenly find it? Thirdly, there are many continuity errors and inconsistencies in this special. Fourthly, I know I said this, but the song in the intro is forgettable as hell. Fifthly, there are almost no funny jokes, with the first half in the courtroom being boring. Overall, this episode was terrible and didn't have to last for so long. The third special is basically a sequel to Add the Dad. The plot is about Timmy's dad hating himself for making floods in the house every time while trying to fix something with his key. So the dads from Planet of Dads decide that they need Timmy's mother in their missing lives, so they go to Planet Earth and robot Timmy tricks Timmy's fairies to lose their magic so that they could easily capture his mom. After they capture her, Timmy tries to save her with the help of Mark Chang, but fails the first time. The second time he asks his dad to help and succeeds, with his dad tricking the other dads and flooding the base. In the end, Timmy creates a planet of moms, so that they wouldn't visit the Earth again. This episode is not as good as the first one for me, but I think that it was kinda alright and had a few nice moments. The fourth special is about Dark Laser, Mr. Crocker, and Poop teaming up to defeat Timmy on one day in a million years when his fairies can't use magic. They create a team called League of Super Evil Revenge Seekers and try to defeat Timmy with various methods, but end up failing each time. They then decide to have Wiki on their team, who helps to train them in destroying Timmy. When the day of no magic is almost over, the losers come up to Timmy's house and reveal that Wiki is now also on their side, after which they chase him to the Dimmsdale Park. They try to injure Timmy at the park with various methods, but hurt themselves instead. After the day of no magic finishes, Timmy whispers a wish to his fairies. The losers are all turned into Timmys, and because of not knowing that, they all end up getting blasted and eventually lose, excluding Wiki from their league. This episode is decent. There's a joke of Timmy's dad getting into random clubs, which isn't very funny, and also I think that they will use Dark Laser's toy dog Flipsy in the future episodes. Other than that, this episode overall has a nice and creative idea, and for that I think it's decent. The plot is about Timmy's parents finally finding out about his fairies. To keep his fairies, Timmy tries to keep Jorgen distracted by the amusement park he created in his backyard. The rest of the episode is just about Timmy's parents making some wishes, including a wish of exploring the world. After they return, Timmy's dad makes a last wish of finding his wife's wedding ring that he lost. Then Jorgen crashes into the room with a roller coaster and says that the talking golf ball his dad wished for told him about his parents knowing about Cosmo, Wanda, and Poof's existence. Timmy cries while saying goodbye to the fairies, but Timmy's parents ask if it's possible for Jorgen to erase their memory instead of taking Timmy's fairies, on which Jorgen agrees. The episode ends with Timmy's parents forgetting about the fairies and Timmy wishing for his dad to find the wedding ring that he lost again. I love this episode for the idea of Timmy's parents finding out about the fairies and also for seeing the relationship between the fairies and Timmy's parents. At the same time though, I hate the ending with Jorgen agreeing to erase the memories of Timmy's parents, since they never really mentioned anything about the memory erasure in this show, and that one detail is the only major thing that doesn't let me call this episode great. Not a bad episode though, it's alright in my opinion. Overall, this season mostly just had either decent or terrible specials. When your season doesn't even have a single good episode, it's definitely a bad sign of things to come. So between 2011 and 2014, 3 live-action Fairly OddParents movies came out. I decided to add them as well since they're also a part of this franchise. So before season 9, let's quickly review all 3 of them. Jeffy 2010 will do the first because I really need to take a quick break after those 2 seasons.
The first live-action movie of the Fairly OddParents, Grow Up Timmy Turner, starring Drake Bell. Oh god, not it. Okay, I'll do a brief summary of what's it about. It's about a 23-year-old Timmy Turner, but maintains a lifestyle of a 10-year-old to keep his godparents. Yeah. So, Timmy finds Tootie, who reunites with him, having an obsessive crush on him. And Timmy falls in love with her. Really? And his godparents, and afraid it's gonna grow up and they no longer need them. Timmy is torn between his love Tootie and to keep his godparents. He conquered himself with an order tycoon, Hugh Magni. I don't know what the fuck it's called. Okay. Sorry for the swearing. In order to kidnap Timmy's fairies, use magic. So, yeah, I don't know how you're gonna. Okay, so, the animation. Casa, Wanda, and Pooh look nightmarishly awful in CG, and I don't like it. I don't like their main characters. The only thing I like is Crocker. Just Crocker is all I like. Everything else, boring or abysmal. I rate it a 3 out of 10.
Okay, I'm done with my break. Okay, so don't really expect these movie reviews to be long, since I never was a huge fan of the Fairly OddParents movie trilogy. There's also a Fairly OddParents sitcom that was released this year, and I'm not looking forward to reviewing that one. Anyway, the second movie has to be my most favorite from the trilogy. It doesn't mean that it's good, but I find it to be alright compared to the third one. The plot is about less people wanting presents from Santa because of Timmy's selfish wishes. This leads to Timmy, Tootie, and the fairies being sent to the North Pole by elves. Santa ends up getting amnesia, and because of that Timmy has to replace him. However, Timmy first needs to remove his name from the naughty list by visiting Elmer the Elder Elf. They also later meet Mr. Crocker, who joins them to erase his name from the naughty list too. In the end, his name gets off the list and Timmy saves the Christmas, with fairies and elves resolving their differences. Oh, also I forgot to say, elves mostly don't add anything to the story and are only useful for sending Timmy, Tootie and the fairies to the North Pole. This movie was alright. There's nothing I can really mention since the plot isn't even related to the show itself. I also have a feeling that this movie's budget became even less than the first one, but maybe it's because of the snowy location they chose for the movie. If I had to highlight some of the benefits, then I think that Mr. Crocker's actor does the best job with his role from all of the cast. I also like the idea of characters traveling from point A to point B, and I kinda like the North Pole setting they picked for this one. Yeah, nothing really else to add here. It's the best from Trilogy, but it's alright with some pluses and minuses. Okay, the last movie in the whole trilogy, and it's probably the worst one. Now, before talking about the movie, I would just like to say that some of you may have noticed that I'm ranking 3 live-action movies separately, but I ranked the official movies from the seasons together with the season. The reason is that I prefer to call them specials and consider them related to the original show, while these live-action movies aren't related to the original show but still are part of the Fairly OddParents franchise because of many characters from the original show in the future. So I hope that we have got that out of the way and there won't be any questions about the live-action movies being ranked separately from the original series. Anyway, the plot of this movie is about Timmy having to guard the source of all fairy magic called Abracadabrium. Hold on a second, isn't the big one the source of all fairy magic? Whatever. Suddenly, Tootie, Jorgen and also his parents have to leave to Hawaii for their own reasons. Tootie needs to go there to deliver some gas cure for dolphins, Jorgen is competing in a biceps contest, and his parents have to provide entertainment in the form of fire dance or else his dad will be fired. Timmy then realizes that mixed up his lip balm with Tootie's gas cure and also his parents accidentally packed the check with money in his lunch. He then travels to Hawaii where he manages to deliver the gas cure and check. Also, I forgot to mention the side characters in this movie. We have Mr. Crocker gets sent to Hawaii by his mom to cure his obsessions with fairies, and also Poop, who was sent by the Anti-Fairy League to find Abracadabrium. Mr. Crocker and Poop obviously team up and manage to capture Abracadabrium, which makes Jorgen frustrated to the point of winning the biceps contest. Also, there are some 2 rich kids who were sent to Hawaii with Wiki as their babysitter. They don't really add up a lot to the story, and only thing mentioning about them is that Timmy and Tootie helped them to escape from Wiki. Okay, so in the end, Timmy goes to the volcano where Mr. Crocker is planning to destroy the Abracadabrium with lava, but then acts good because of holding the Abracadabra nonsense. Timmy arrives at the volcano to take the Abracadabrium from Foop and rescue the kids and Tootie, but Foop doesn't let him take it and causes Timmy and himself to fall into lava. And now get ready for it. Timmy turns into a freaking fairy with the help of Abracadabra trash. This is just so stupid. This is not how you should end a trilogy. Whatever, I know the writers didn't care about the show continuity. So Foop gets thrown out by Poop and Timmy officially becomes Tootie's fairy godparent for some reason. Also, Timmy and Wanda become the fairy godparents of those 2 rich kids because why not? The kids wish for Vicky to turn into a rabbit and Crocker does the fire dance for the boss of Timmy's dad. There you go, we're done with the trilogy. If you think about it, this movie could have worked if the creators paid attention to the concept of the original show. The ending is definitely what made me really pissed off, since there are so many illogical moments. What was the point of the Abracadabra thing if Timmy just used it in the end to become a fairy godparent? Why did he become Tootie's godparent? She doesn't have a miserable life and she's an adult. Why from all of the people, Cosmo, Wanda and Poop became the godparents of those 2 rich kids? I mean, their life isn't great, but I think that Jorgen selected them only because Butch Hartman told him to do so. I just remembered how in Channel Chasers, Timmy learns that his fairies won't be with him forever and that his childhood would end at one moment, while in this movie, Timmy just becomes a fairy, proving that he hasn't learned anything from Season 4. I also think that the budget became even less from the last 2 movies, since the 3D models of fairies don't really blend well with the real world. Overall, this movie is the weakest in the trilogy, and was just mostly boring with an awful ending. And with these live-action movies finally reviewed, let's move to Season 9.
So, Season 9, yeah, I don't like it. A lot of bad episodes in the season. The best I'll say is the very beginning. And the worst, a 3-way tie between App Trap, Fairy Odd Pet, and Love at First Spark. Let's talk about them briefly. Okay. App Trap, I don't like it. Timmy is Okay, Timmy is Timmy. Well, I hate Timmy, Sparky, and Cosmo. Oh wait, let's talk about Sparky since he was added to the 9th season. Sparky is Sparky sucks. I hate this character. He's annoying. That's it. He's annoying. And I hate this character so freaking much. Okay, let's go back to the episode. Love at first spark. Yeah. I mean, Timmy Turner's dad is falling in love with a dog. Yeah, it's uncomfortable. And why? I'm asking why. And Fairy Oddpet introduces Sparky. Yeah, it's not good. It's not good, all three of them. This one sucks. I hate this season so much. Back to you, Martin.
Where do I even start, honestly? This sure has to be the worst Fairly OddParents season made. Season 10 was the final season to be produced, and oh my god was it bad. Firstly, the animation in the season is bad in my opinion. The style is mostly similar to season 9 but kinda worse for some reason. They also changed the style to flash animation with episode 14 and it looks awful in my opinion. Anyway, remember when we added Poof and Sparky? Yeah, that was boring as hell. Instead, let's add a girl called Chloe Carmichael. Not only will we make her pointless and annoying, but we're also going to make her the main character. We can even make her Cosmo and Wanda's godchild alongside Timmy Turner. Okay, so first of all, this idea is completely stupid. In the first episode, Chloe becomes a godchild and the writers try to show that her life is also miserable. The problem though is that the writers fail miserably at showing a miserable life. Timmy did have a miserable life from the very start and deserved to get his own fairies in the pilot. Chloe on the other hand though, has a lot of attention from everybody else and parents that try to spend time with her. Her life may be bad in a few cases, but it's clearly not miserable. Secondly, what the heck happened to Sparky? I mean, he wasn't a good character, but how did he just randomly disappear from the show? Did Timmy just wish for him to leave the show? You know, maybe that's the reason so many classic characters left the show. Maybe Timmy just lost interest in spending time with them and slowly wished for them to leave. Remy Bucks Aplenty, Crimson Chin, Chip Skylark, Anti-Fairies, the Pixies, those names just don't mean anything to him anymore. He just slowly got rid of each one of them. Jokes aside though, they stopped using a lot of classic characters, and those that they did use, believe me, they used them a lot throughout the season. Like there were so many episodes with Catman, Mr. Crocker, or Timmy's freaking dad. They seriously just started making Timmy's dad see the fairies without questioning their appearance. I've kinda realized that this season doesn't care about the continuity of the show whatsoever. Anyway, there were 3 specials in the season, so let's quickly get through them. The first special was the first episode of season 10, introducing Chloe. As already said, it is freaking terrible. So terrible that I consider it as the worst episode in the whole show. An episode that just demonstrated the whole quality of season 10 and proved that the writers don't care about the show anymore. In the second one, Mr. Crocker captures Timmy, Chloe, Cosmo, and Wanda disguised as booby birds and wants to poach them. They obviously escape and Crocker gets punished. The only kinda notable thing is that this episode is the first introduction to Chloe's parents, whom I don't really care about as characters. The last one is about Poof coming back from school on a spring break with Poof and Sammy Sweet Sparkle. Poof tricks Cosmo and Wanda into winning a French dinner, which turns out to be a black hole that pushes them in for almost the whole special. Chloe becomes a babysitter and babysits all the kids and Timmy's dad till the moment when Wiki arrives. Wiki traps Timmy and Chloe in the basement where Timmy has to run on a treadmill floor and eat Brussels. Chloe meanwhile has to pick garbage that makes the room fill up with even more garbage as she picks it up. While they come up with a plan of escaping, Wiki uses the other 4 characters and makes fun of them. After Timmy and Chloe escape, Chloe almost loses to Wiki, but then after Foop asks her to say here punchy, she gets punched by some random kangaroo. That is a running gag of this episode for some reason. Anyway, Poof gets rid of Wiki and the episode ends with Cosmo and Wanda somehow surviving the black hole. I know that they're fairies, but even if they survived by the magic self, then they should have used their magic before getting injured. The episode mostly sucks. I like how they brought back Poof after being absent for almost the whole season, but I'm personally not a fan of his new voice. Wiki's appearance seems kinda weird and meaningless, since the fact that she's just torturing everybody out of nowhere, including Timmy's dad, doesn't look similar to her original character. But why am I actually talking about character personnel? kids. This is season 10, it just doesn't care about the original show. Overall, all 3 specials weren't good even for the slightest. I actually don't have anything else to say here. I wanted to mention at least some good episodes, but there weren't any. All of the episodes were either mediocre, bad, or just terrible. This season had my least favorite episode, the Big Fairy Share Scare, that introduced an annoying and pointless character to the show, proving that the Fairly OddParents officially declined in quality. Nothing about this season was good. I think that even Butch Hartman just completely stopped caring about the show at this point. Fancy Schmancy was the last episode to be ever produced, and the Kale Patch Caper was the last episode to be aired. After 16 years, the Fairly OddParents was cancelled. Bush would then leave Nickelodeon in 2018 and make a video about it on his channel. Bush would then come back in 2021 to work on a live-action animated sequel of the Fairly OddParents. And sadly, because it's also a part of the franchise, I'll have to briefly review it. Dear Lord, reviewing this one will be a huge torture. I heard about the show when it just came out and tried to avoid watching it. Why? Well, I thought that it would be terrible. And turns out that I wasn't wrong. Many people hate this live-action animated show as well. I mean, just by the trailer I could already tell that it would be a huge mess. I won't review this one for too long, since there was only one season with 13 episodes made so far. Anyway, the show is about Timmy's cousin Vivian, who moves into a new town called Dimsdale with her father. There she meets her stepmom that acts kinda mean to her, and also her stepbrother Roy that likes to make surprise parties and has a lot of friends. Timmy is getting ready to leave for college and decides to transfer the fairies to his cousin. However, Roy witnesses the transfer of the fairies, and Jorgen says that Vivian and Roy will share them by taking turns. Then Timmy leaves Dimsdale and Viv and Roy become the new Fairly godchildren. There, did I sound like I'm interested in the concept of the show? I didn't know I would ever say this, but season 10 was better than this. At least season 10 felt like it was the Fairly OddParents. Well, it was a complete decline of the Fairly OddParents, but at least you could tell that it's a decline of the show you watched. This series, though, just feels like a really poorly fan-made continuation after the show was cancelled. The only thing that sucks though is that Butch Hartman himself worked on this. Anyway, I'm just gonna list all the minuses and pluses of the series. Firstly with the pluses. I like to hear the original voice actors again, but they clearly didn't have to participate in this. That's all the pluses. Now let's list the minuses. Firstly, the animation in this series sucks. Season 10 had an awful animation, but this series almost doesn't have animation. The only exception is for some of the visual effects, like the cloud that appears after the wish is made, which isn't anything too special, and some of the characters from the original show, who in my opinion look bad in a real world setting. But I prefer 3D more for the real world theme. I don't think 2D is bad, but for me the characters don't look good with this type of an art style. Also, the animation can really show how poor it looks in some of the moments due to the slight character design changes. I get that Nick didn't really care a lot about the animation, but they still could have done a way better job. The second thing I don't like about the show is the humor. The humor in the show overall is just so weird. The show can make jokes about some modern trends, which is just really cringy in my opinion, but it also makes some references or jokes towards the original show. So like, is it aiming for a younger or older audience? Because the little kids wouldn't get all the jokes towards the original series, while adults wouldn't care to watch some pointless reboot of the Fairly OddParents. And the writing just makes the series even less funny than it already is, since the writing in this show is really weak and uses a similar formula for a lot of the jokes. The jokes in the series are just seriously so unfunny for me. I don't think there was a single joke I actually laughed at. I don't know why, but I can already predict Butch's formula of jokes with weird overreaction from characters, repetition of the same joke, and the exact opposite thing of what somebody says happening. The humor is awful in this show, and it's obviously because of the writing not being clever enough to make better jokes, or maybe a better idea for a Fairly OddParents reboot rather than what we got. The new characters are also pretty generic and uninteresting, but like with the humor, it's all because of the writers not being able to make the characters with better personalities or story arcs for the reboot. There were some returning characters like Wiki or Mr. Crocker, but even with them added, I still didn't find myself interested in watching the series. Also, I have nothing against the actors, but I still think that they could have done a way better job at acting their roles if their characters wouldn't be so poorly written. Last thing I would like to mention are the songs. There wasn't a single song I liked or remembered from this season. Maybe it's just my perspective and some people will like them, but I personally didn't enjoy the songs as well. Overall, this live-action animated show is terrible, and I hope that it will be cancelled as well, since the Fairly OddParents franchise really should have ended completely by this point. If nothing is going to change with this franchise into more of a positive direction in the future, then maybe the best thing to do is just to let the franchise rest forever. Well, this was really hard but also fun. Sitting in one place and revisiting all of the seasons and other movies was really hard, since it can be really challenging for me to describe one whole season shortly. That's why it's most likely that some of these seasons will be way longer or shorter than the other ones. I can't deny that this was really fun until somewhere like season 8, since I could revisit my most favorite episodes from the whole show. With the later seasons, however, the show started to lose the charm that it had in the early ones. Season 10 is when I sadly realized that the show's creativity was completely gone and replaced with annoying characters and unfunny jokes. It's quite sad to end on this note, since Butch worked on this show for 16 years only to end with a terrible season and leave Nickelodeon for years. Even after returning, Butch just started working on that horrible Fairly OddParents reboot, so this isn't really an amazing conclusion. But we can still hope for the best and believe that Butch may be able to create something new and creative like Fairly OddParents in the future. Butch did a fantastic job as the first seasons of the Fairly OddParents, and I believe that he still has some potential for a new masterpiece. The only thing that we can do is to wait and see, so let's just hope for the best. Also, this video was mostly inspired by Asker's Fairly OddParents downfall video and some of Alice Mark's videos about this show, so links to their channels in the description. Also, my animated character is inspired by Alice Mark, so as I said, link to his channel in the description. By the way, I just wanted to mention that I obviously didn't provide all of the information and skipped a lot of good or bad episodes. The reason is because it would make this video really long, and I tried to review each season and all of the other stuff shortly. That's why you can always share your best and worst episodes that I couldn't mention in the comments below. Also, Jeffy 2010, what do you think about the downfall of the Fairly OddParents?
I think the downfall is not good. I mean, it's extremely gone downhill a lot. It got worse and worse and worse. After season 5, it went gradually got downhill. So, yeah. A lot bad episodes, bad characters, bad spin-offs, bad movies. It's not good. To the point where yeah, I don't like it. I mean, the show started out great with season 1 to 5, but after 5, it severely gone downhill. Like, gradually get worse over time.
Thanks for your opinion, Jeffy 2010, and of course thanks for helping me with this video. Without your help, this would be harder and less fun to make. I'm gonna leave a link to Jeffy 2010's channel in the description, so again, thanks a lot for helping with the video. Well, with that said, I hope you all enjoyed the video. It took a lot of time to make, so please subscribe and share your opinion about the video in the comments below if you want to. Thanks for watching, goodbye.